Hello, wizards, witches, muggles, and squibs, and welcome back to Spellbuzz. I'm your host, Francesca Williams, and on today's episode, we have a book-to-film comparison for Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Now, I'm sure many of you are already aware that there are quite a few differences between the Harry Potter books and the films. While I do believe that the films encapsulated the essence of Harry Potter really well, there were some key details that were left out due to the fact that they had to try and condense the entire book into a runtime of about 1 to 2 hours. Without further ado, let's get into my first difference, which is the fact that the book and the film start very differently. In the film, it starts with Hagrid, Dumbledore, and McGonagall discussing about whether they should give Harry to the Dursleys. But the book actually begins with a chapter not told from Harry's perspective. The only chapters in the entire saga not to be told from Harry's perspective. And the first half is told by Vernon Dursley, which is the bit that I will get into, which is the main difference. And the second part is the first scene that we see in the film. The first part, told from Vernon Dursley's perspective, follows Vernon going out for a day of work. And basically, this is the day after Lily and James Potter have been killed and Harry defeated Voldemort. And Vernon sees a lot of strange things about, which is why I would have really loved to have included it in the films, because I think it really sets up Vernon's character. And although McGonagall later expresses the fact that she felt that the wizards and witches were risking the exposure of their world, I think it really does show how much muggles may, I suppose, gaslight themselves into believing that there is nothing wrong. So I've got my trusty Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone book here, and I've got 3 extracts from the beginning of this chapter that I would like to read to you, just so you can see what they missed out in the film that I think would have made it much more interesting. Let's start off with the first part, which is where Vernon leaves for work and he sees a cat watching him. We, as the audience, obviously already know that it is McGonagall, but Vernon at this point doesn't. We don't know as the audience if you've never read the books before, but on a whole, we now know that it is McGonagall. It begins like this. It was on the corner of the street that he noticed the first sign of something peculiar, a cat reading a map. For a second, Mr. Dursley didn't realise what he had seen. Then he jerked his head around to look again. There was a tabby cat standing on the corner of Privet Drive, but there wasn't a map in sight. What could he have been thinking of? It must have been a trick of the light. Mr. Dursley blinked and stared at the cat. It stared back. As Mr. Dursley drove around the corner and up the road, he watched the cat in his mirror. It was now reading the sign that said Privet Drive. No, looking at the sign. Cats couldn't read maps or signs. And that's the beginning of the saga where Mr. Dursley realises something is a bit peculiar, but it also shows the fact that he's trying to convince himself that everything is perfectly fine. While it does express throughout the books and the films that the Dursleys are muggles that particularly deny the wizarding world, I'm sure that many muggles would also take this mindset.
There's no such thing as magic!
Now, my second extract is only a few lines after the first, so let's begin. As he sat in the usual morning traffic jam, he couldn't help noticing that there seemed to be a lot of strangely dressed people about. People in cloaks. Mr. Dursley couldn't bear people who dressed in funny clothes, the get-ups you saw on young people. He supposed this was some stupid new fashion. He drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, and his eyes fell on a huddle of these weirdos standing quite close by. They were whispering excitedly together. Mr. Dursley was enraged to see that a couple of them weren't young at all. Why, that man has to be older than he was, and wearing an emerald green cloak. I love this extract because it shows how funky Wizarding World fashion was. Now, this is something that I feel the films could have gone a little bit further with, as we actually see a lot of the Wizarding children or Hogwarts students dressed in quite normal muggle attire when they're not in lessons, but I actually have an inkling that they could have been dressed a little bit more strangely after reading this first part of the chapter. My third extract is right on Vernon Dursley's lunch break, where he gets the first inkling that it might be something to do with his very own family. He'd forgotten all about the people in cloaks until he passed a group of them next to the bakers. He eyed them angrily as he passed. He didn't know why, but they made him uneasy. This lot were whispering excitedly too, and he couldn't see a single collecting tin. And this line is because he's trying to convince himself that they're just dressing funny for charity. It was on his way back past them, clutching a large donut in a bag, that he caught a few words of what they were saying. The Potters, that's right, that's what I heard. Yes, their son, Harry. Mr. Dursley stopped dead. Fear flooded him. He looked back at the whisperers as if he wanted to say something to them, but he thought better of it. He dashed back across the road, hurried up to his office, snapped at his secretary not to disturb him, seized his telephone, and had almost finished dialing his home number when he changed his mind. He put the receiver back down and stroked his moustache, thinking. No, he was being stupid. Potter wasn't such an unusual name. He was sure there were lots of people called Potter who had a son called Harry. Come to think of it, he wasn't even sure his nephew was called Harry. I feel like that would have added a lot to the films, as it really, for me, makes you understand the way he acts when he sees the letters and he thinks he can just ignore the Wizarding World, because that is pretty much what he's been doing his whole life, even though he is quite aware that it is likely something to do with him, as it makes him so uneasy. He just chooses to ignore it. My second difference actually comes at the second part of this chapter, when Hagrid, Dumbledore and McGonagall are discussing leaving Harry with these muggles, the Dursleys. And it is the fact that Dumbledore asks Hagrid where he got his flying motorbike from. And Hagrid replies that Sirius Black lent it to him. Now, I would really have loved this line to be included in the films, even though I understand why they didn't, because they weren't sure if they were going to make any more or how popular they were going to be. And obviously, Sirius Black doesn't really appear till you get to the Prisoner of Azkaban. But this line shows that Sirius Black was still considered an ally. And it begs the question for me as to why Harry wasn't left with his godfather, Sirius Black. This really foreshadows or gives us an inkling into the fact that when Lily sacrificed herself for Harry, she left a blood protection on him, which is why when he stays with the Dursleys, he is protected. And this is a really key part for all of the plots throughout all of Harry Potter, because otherwise, why didn't the Death Eaters come and attack him earlier? And obviously, he was with the Muggles, so they wouldn't really look for him there. So I really loved that. And although this is shown throughout all of the movies, it isn't explained until the Order of the Phoenix. So, as I said, I completely understand why it wasn't shown in the films, but I am really hoping that this particular line is included in the HBO series, because I think it adds so many layers. And this whole chapter, including the part from Vernon's perspective, has already been confirmed to be included in the HBO series. So I'm really excited for that. Also, so moving on to difference number 2, and that is the fact that Mrs. Figg is actually mentioned in the first book. And this is the fact she's been babysitting Harry his whole life. So this gives us a much more rounded backstory on Harry's life in the Muggle world and the protection he was under, because obviously in the Order of the Phoenix as well, we understand why Mrs. Figg was asked to protect Harry, because she's a squib and that she lived nearby and she basically kept an eye on him. And I'm pretty sure it mentions throughout the book that Harry actually quite liked Mrs. Figg and he got a warm sense of feeling from being with her, which could be because the Dursleys were so cruel, but also could have been through that tiny bit of magic inside of him, almost igniting a spark when he saw another member of the wizarding community. Moving on to the point about the fact that it never mentions it in the films, but after the first letter is received by the Dursleys of Harry's Hogwarts acceptance letter, and it says the cupboard under the stairs, they move him from the cupboard under the stairs to Dudley's second bedroom, which understandably Dudley is very angry about. And this is Vernon Dursley's way of kind of patching it up, as they don't really want anyone to know how they've been treating Harry, and they're obviously scared of wizards and witches. But what I particularly like, and why I would have enjoyed this to be in the film as well, is because it is in fact mentioned in the Chamber of Secrets. I watched the Chamber of Secrets, the film, last night, and it mentions about Harry being in Dudley's second bedroom, and obviously we see that as well. And so it would be nice to have included that, because it does set up the rest of the saga. And also on the letters after Harry has moved to Dudley's second bedroom, the address changes from Harry Potter, the cupboard under the stairs, to Harry Potter, the smallest bedroom, which I think is a really nice touch. On to my next point is the fact that it's Vernon that drops Harry off at King's Cross Station before he runs through the barrier and gets on the Hogwarts Express. And in the books, he actually drops him off and then they drive away laughing because they know Harry is not going to be able to find his way to the Hogwarts Express. And obviously, in their muggle minds, there is no such thing as platform 9 3/4. For me, this just amplifies their cruelty towards Harry, and also another tiny point that I really hope is included in the series, personally. I feel like it will be because, I mean, I've heard rumours that they are trying to get it so book accurate that they have someone on set with the book making sure that nothing important is missed. So I feel like they can't miss out that detail. But in the films, it really seems like Hagrid is the one that takes Harry away on that night that he first goes to see him, and he doesn't return to the Dursleys until after the school year. But that is not the case. He returns to the Dursleys between that time of Hagrid visiting him, and then it is the Dursleys that drop him off at King's Cross Station. Moving on to my next point, which is about the way the characters look. As I said, the films did a very good job of capturing the essence of Harry Potter. Such a good job that I think many people struggle with the idea that the characters may have looked anything different to the actors that played them in the films, but this is in fact incorrect. I think there was lots of small issues with the films where, for example, Daniel Radcliffe was allergic to the green contact lenses, which is why his eyes are blue. Although throughout the books and at some points in the films, well, in the films they don't say your eyes are green just like your mother's, they say you have eyes just like your mother's, but in the books it's clear that Harry has green eyes just like Lily's, but Daniel Radcliffe was allergic to the contact lenses, so they didn't use them. Furthermore, you may have not known, but in the book Hermione is described to have a bushy brown hair, which I feel like they do a good job of capturing the essence of in the Philosopher's Stone, but she's also said to have prominent front two teeth that kind of extend. I picture them as rabbit teeth personally. And when they made the films, they said that they did actually try to put prosthetic teeth on Emma Watson, which I think would have been so good.
Hello, my name is Emma Watson, playing the part of Hermione Granger.
And this is what? Your normal teeth, yes?
Yeah, these are my normal teeth.
And which ones are these, Emma?
These are teeth number 3, and I think these are the best.
Okay, will you turn in profile, Emma? Okay, smile.
But they realised it was really impractical to start every day of filming by putting prosthetics on an 11-year-old child, especially in the mouth that's wet, and it's quite hard to stick them on, I imagine. Furthermore, Vernon Dursley was supposed to have black hair and a bushy black moustache. Petunia is said to have blonde hair, and also this is something I can see why they can't really include in the movie, but I mean, I don't know how they'd do it, but it is prominent to her character, is the fact that she has a very long neck, and then Dudley also has blonde hair, and Minerva McGonagall has black hair. Now, overall, in the films, they portrayed the characters, mainly the adult characters, as a lot older than they were in the books. Think, Lily and James were only 20 years old when they gave birth to Harry. So in the Mirror of Erised, they shouldn't really appear older than 31, because Harry's 11, right? But yet, in everyone's opinion, pretty much, most people I speak to, they appear older than that. Now, with the series, I'm not 100% confident that they have managed to do the casting much better than the films have, but I have seen a lot of hope in the age department, especially with the behind-the-scenes photos of Molly Weasley, and she appears to be much younger in the series than she was in the films, which I think shows her character better. And also what I've seen of Vernon and Petunia, they also look a lot younger, so I think they've clearly been mindful with their adult characters to try and make them more accurate to their ages, whereas I think with the films they had so many British icons in there that, I mean, I think that's what they were going for over age accuracy. They were going for like the vibe, if that makes any sense. Now, the issues that I still see in the series from what I've seen of any behind the scenes photos and stuff is the fact that Vernon Dursley's hair still appears to be mousy brown at best. It doesn't really appear to be dark brown black. The little boy who plays Harry has blue eyes once again, and obviously through behind the scenes pictures we can't see if he has green contacts in, and we don't know if they're going to render his eyes afterwards through editing, so it may still be changed, but for now, that's what we know. And I obviously hope that they use prosthetics where they can to make the characters seem closer to their characters that we see in the books. Now, I really wonder if they're going to try and put teeth prosthetics on Arabella Stanton, which is the little girl who plays Hermione.
It's Leviosa, not Leviosa.
And hear me out. This is because they have already confirmed with the series that they're going to be doing every single book as a series. And in The Goblet of Fire, Hermione actually gets her teeth shortened by Madame Pomfrey after Draco extends them too far. And I think it'd be really nice for the first 3.5 books that we turn into a series that Arabella has teeth prosthetics in. So then when you get to book 4, you can take them off and you can see a noticeable difference with her teeth. Because this is a really big plot point for Hermione when she goes from being this kind of awkward looking, brainiac girl basically to someone who's considered actually very pretty. So I think that would be really interesting. But enough of the series for now, and let's move on to my next difference. The next thing that was in the books that wasn't included in the films was the fact there was a lot more foreshadowing in the books than the films. Once again, this is because they didn't know if they were going to do all the films, so they weren't sure what to include, so they included the most important plot points per book rather than plot points per series for the whole series. In the book, there is a part where Harry has a dream about Quirrel, which foreshadows to the fact that he is helping Voldemort. Perhaps Harry had eaten a bit too much, because he had a very strange dream. He was wearing Professor Quirrell's turban, which kept talking to him, telling him he must transfer to Slytherin at once because it was his destiny. Harry told the turban he didn't want to be in Slytherin. It got heavier and heavier. He tried to pull it off, but it tightened painfully, and there was Malfoy laughing at him as he struggled with it. Then Malfoy turned into the hooked-nosed teacher Snape, whose laugh became high and cold. There was a burst of green light and Harry woke, sweating and shaking. He rolled over and fell asleep again, and when he woke up the next day, he didn't remember the dream at all. Now for me, not only does this foreshadow the fact that Quirrell was helping Voldemort, is the right word I feel, it also foreshadows, once again, the Order of the Phoenix when Harry is able to see into Voldemort's mind and that two-way connection, which once again I think would have added a lot more layers to the film. Next is actually the Hogwarts dynamic. So let me tell you, in the films you see all the houses in each class, but in the books there's actually only one house per class. So for example, charms would be taken only by Gryffindors, but with first years their potions and flying lessons are with Slytherin. But Harry does mention in the book wishing that they'd chosen another house for Gryffindor to do flying lessons with, which already shows his disdain obviously of Draco Malfoy. My next point is the fact that in the films, it isn't clear who gives Harry the Nimbus 2000, but in the book, it is made explicitly clear that it is Professor McGonagall. And I personally love this point because I feel like it adds an essence of family and it shows an extra layer as to why Harry felt so at home at Hogwarts and how the teachers really were looking out for him. Let me read you the note that he found on the broom. It says, in capitals, "Do not open the parcel at the table. It contains your new Nimbus 2000, but I don't want everybody knowing you've got a broomstick or they'll all want one. Oliver Wood will meet you tonight at the Quidditch pitch at 7 o'clock for your first training session. Professor M. McGonagall." So I love that as it shows how Harry really did have a family at Hogwarts. And on to my next point, which is all about kind of the Christmas period at Hogwarts. So my first thing about this Christmas period is the fact that when Harry woke up on Christmas morning, he spent the day with all of the Weasley brothers, not just Ron. In the film, it seems like it is just Ron, but as Ron mentions, his parents are going to visit his brother Charlie. And so all of the Weasley siblings, obviously apart from Ginny, who's not at Hogwarts, had to spend Christmas at Hogwarts and Harry spent it with them. And this really gives more emphasis onto his building relationships with the Weasleys. My second part is the part about the Mirror of Erised. After Harry gets fixated on the Mirror of Erised, It's depicted very clearly in the films as well as the books. They're very similar. But there's one key line, once again, a key foreshadowing line that is left out in the films. And this is when Harry asks Dumbledore what he sees in the mirror. And Dumbledore replies that he sees himself with a pair of socks. Obviously, this is a lie and a good quick thinking cover-up for Dumbledore, as it's a very personal question. But it's not until the Deathly Hallows that we see that what Dumbledore would have really seen was his family all alive and together again with no more qualms. I just think there are so much more layers to the characters in the book, which I just wish would have been included in the films, and I'm so excited to hopefully see included in the series. Now, the next part is something that actually expands onto multiple points across all of the films, and this is the fact that Nicholas Flamel was discovered differently in the books to the films. In the films, Hermione reads all about him in a book, but in the book, it's actually Harry who knows where he's heard Nicholas Flamel's name before. Harry is comforting Neville after he's been bullied, and he gives Neville a chocolate frog. Neville takes out the card and passes it back to Harry, as he knows Harry collects them. And on the back of the card, well, it's a Dumbledore card for starters, and on the back of the card, it mentions that Dumbledore is credited with working with Nicholas Flamel to discover the Philosopher's Stone. And this is where Harry realises where he had heard Nicholas Flamel's name before and what would have been in the vault. Whereas in the films, obviously this moment was completely taken by Hermione. This is possibly the first time it's happened in the movies, but it is not the only time that it would happen, as it's actually been said that the production team wanted Hermione to come across as a strong female character. So there are many times where she was given other characters key moments or lines. For example, in this case, it was the discovery of something big. There are also many times where she has taken Ron's line as well. And the reason the production team did this is because they felt that it would help them market the movies to more people. But to me, it begs the question as to whether the HBO series is going to go in the same direction, or whether they're going to be true to Hermione's book personality. For me, personally, please don't kill me, but I watched the films before I read the books, partially because I watched the films at about age 6, so I wasn't able to read the books then. And then obviously I kept watching the films. But once I read the books, I didn't really like Hermione as much as I loved her in the films. And I felt like at times, although she is a strong female character, she is a bit frustrating. I don't want to say annoying, but I'm going to say annoying and hard to digest. In the books, my favourite two characters were definitely Ron and Ginny, which I feel like in the film fits, because in the film Hermione's personality is kind of pulled a bit from Ron and obviously a lot from Ginny, because Ginny in the films is really left without much personality, but in the books she's a really cool character. So yeah, I am really intrigued as to whether the series is going to make Hermione as her book personality, which I imagine will ruffle a few feathers of people that have only seen the films, or whether they're going to stick to this strong female lead idea. I hope they do go for the book avenue, because as they've already said, they're trying to make everything else so book identical, and they're taking so much care over it. So it doesn't make any sense whatsoever why they would then sterilize Ron and Ginny's characters to make Hermione more of a stronger lead. But that's just my take on it. My next point is all about the Forbidden Corridor, where they first meet Fluffy. This is, in the films, kind of set up to be a complete whoopsie-daisy accident. We've been on the staircases, it's changed. Oh no, we're on the wrong floor. Quick, Filch's coming, hide. There's a giant dog with 3 heads, sort of thing. But in the books, it's much more mischievous than that. In fact, Draco challenges Harry to a duel, and Ron has agreed to go with Harry because obviously Harry knows nothing about duels, having been raised by muggles, and Ron knows all about them. And is probably quite excited about it too. So they're at the Gryffindor common room, but they're outside. Hermione has tried to stop them, but they've not listened to her. So she's decided that the fact that they've ignored her, she's going to follow them anyway. And then they find Neville sleeping outside the common room because he's forgotten the password. And so he joins them as well. And they all go off to try and find Draco for the duel. At this point, they see Filch. They realise they're out of bed. And so they run away trying to hide, and they end up on the forbidden floor. They then end up finding Fluffy. So in fact, when they see Fluffy for the first time, they have Neville, Harry, Ron and Hermione. And for me, this is another point where a character has been dulled down slightly. And I don't really see why they did did this for the films personally, because I feel like it does really show why Neville deserves to be in Gryffindor, because I feel like a lot of other houses, specifically Hufflepuff, which everyone used to say that he should be in, probably wouldn't have just jumped in and said, yes, I'll come with you. Although they are loyal, there would have been no reason for him to do that. Following on from Neville's heroics, which seemed to be scratched out of the films rather largely, is the plotline about Norbert. And while they do include accurately the first part of Norbert's plot, they leave out the second part, which is essentially where Norbert is smuggled out of Hogwarts. I understand they needed to cut something, so that makes sense, but it's quite interesting to me, and it does make me have a little giggle when I read the book, because it does show that Hagrid is just a big softie and he really doesn't think about consequences, which personally I feel sets up the Chamber of Secrets very nicely. And this is because Ron, somehow being more mature than Hagrid, realises that Hagrid is committing a crime by having Norbert, and he can't raise him at Hogwarts. The Warlocks Convention of 1709 specifically banned the breeding of dragons. So, for Hagrid to have a dragon egg, it would have had to have been illegally bred or illegally trafficked. Now, Ron tries to, bless his heart, help out with this, and he writes a letter to his brother, Charlie, and he basically asks him if he'll take Norbert. So, this is Charlie's response. Dear Ron, how are you? Thanks for the letter. I'd be glad to take the Norwegian Ridgeback, but it won't be easy getting him here. I think the best thing will be to send him over with some friends of mine who are coming to visit me next week. Trouble is, they mustn't be seen carrying an illegal dragon. Could you get the Ridgeback up to the tallest tower at midnight on Saturday? They can meet you there and take him away while it's still dark. Send me an answer as soon as possible. Love, Charlie. Thankfully, this was possible due to Harry's invisibility cloak. But unfortunately, when Ron had originally gone and visited Norbert, he had been bitten on the hand, and this has made his hand green and pussy, so he was in the hospital wing. When he was in the hospital wing, Harry and Hermione visited him to discuss the plot. Here, Draco Malfoy overheard the plot and decided that he would try and get them in trouble, as he obviously doesn't know Harry has the invisibility cloak. On the night that they are to take Norbert up to the tallest tower, Harry and Hermione use the invisibility cloak, take him up and pass him to Charlie Weasley's friends. But they forget the cloak on the way down. They see Draco, who is trying to get them in trouble, but is now in trouble himself for being out of bed and trying to tell on other students. Then they see Filch. They forget that they don't have the invisibility cloak and they have been basically severely told off. And next thing they know, they see Neville. And Neville has run and tried to warn them about the fact that Draco is trying to get them in trouble. So when they end up in the Forbidden Forest detention, unlike in the films where it is Ron, Harry, Hermione and Draco, it is actually Neville, Harry, Hermione and Draco, as Ron is in the hospital wing. I've got the line which says about Neville's heroics, which I think is so sweet of him. Harry, Neville burst out the moment he saw the other two. I was trying to find you to warn you. I heard Malfoy saying he was going to catch you. He said you had a And then Harry obviously shut Neville up because the dragon was extremely illegal. But I love this as well, and obviously hope that it will be in the HBO series. Moving on to the part where they go through past Fluffy and trying to get the Philosopher's Stone. So the first difference is, in the films, it is only Harry that gets on the broomstick to try and catch the key. He takes all the glory, as it would. But in the books, it's actually all three of them that attempt to catch the keys. Obviously, Harry, due to his experience as a seeker and his keen eye noticing one of the key's wings is broken, is the one that catches it. But I think it's a nice show of the trio's bravery and also their friendship. Second of all is the wizard chess game. So in the life-size wizard chess game that they have to play, all of the wizard chess pieces step off to the side while Harry, Hermione and Ron decide what players they want to be. Now, unlike the film, which Ron gets on a horse, in the books they actually all have to stand on the squares and be the players. I think this explains why in the films it seems a bit odd that there's two spots just magically free, but it kind of explains why they've all had to take their places. Furthermore, a little bit of information on how wizard chess works. So in the books it explains that wizard chess works because you have to convince the chess pieces to move to the places you want to. It's almost like you're a general conducting an army, and this is why Ron really has his moment in the life-size wizard chess, because he obviously has the most experience doing this. So say it was just Harry on his own or Hermione, they may not have had the skill to be able to convince the pieces to move where they wanted to, and therefore or may not have been able to pass that test. Obviously, once again, Ron does end up knocked out or injured on the floor. And actually, in the books, both Harry and Hermione proceed onto the next step. Hermione doesn't wait with Ron just yet. They proceed on to the next step, where there is a mountain troll that thankfully has already been knocked out, and so they pass that. And then they reach a room where there's a lot of potions. So the room basically contains the potions that allow them to go forwards, go back, or they would get stuck. They stepped over the threshold and immediately a fire sprang up behind them in the doorway. It wasn't ordinary fire either, it was purple. At the same instant, black flames shot up in the doorway leading onwards. They were trapped. Look, Hermione seized a roll of paper lying next to the bottles. Harry looked over her shoulder to read it. And this is a riddle that they find with the potions, which is why it's perfect that Hermione was there with Harry. And this is her big moment, which instead of stealing Harry's moment with the Philosopher's Stone and Nicholas Flamel, they could have given Hermione her own moment, which is rightfully hers in the book. Of course not, said Hermione. Everything we need is here on this paper. 7 bottles, 3 are poison, 2 are wine. 1 will get us safely through the black fire, and 1 will get us back through the purple. But how do we know which to drink? Give me a minute. Hermione reads the paper several times. Then she walked up and down the line of bottles, muttering to herself and pointing at them. At last, she clapped her hands. Got it, she said. The smallest bottle will get us through the black fire towards the stone. Harry looked at the tiny bottle. There's only enough there for one of us, he said. That's hardly 1 swallow. And that right there is the difference in the films to the books, because in the films it suggests that Hermione chooses to stay with Ron in the first instance and just lets Harry carry on towards danger without helping him really at all. But in the books we can see that that's not true, and she is actually much more courageous than that and helps him discover this riddle. As there is only enough left for 1 drinker, Harry chooses to go through towards the Philosopher's Stone, and Hermione goes back through the doors to help Ron and send an owl to Dumbledore, which explains perfectly why Dumbledore is there to help Harry out after he passes out in where the Philosopher's Stone is. So my next difference to the films versus the books is in the films, when Quirrel is talking to Harry about the Philosopher's Stone, he seems to be quite calm and just talking. But in the books, he actually binds Harry with rope, which shows the stakes are much higher than we originally thought. Although the scene is tense, I feel binding a child with ropes is a new low, and it does show quite how scary it would have been for Harry and also the stakes that Quirrel felt. And this is because he can see in the mirror of Erised himself giving the stone to his master, but he can't see how to get it. And obviously we know that Harry can see how to get it, as it appears to him, because he wants to have the stone but not to use it. And then my next difference, that I suppose it's not really a difference, it's just left out of the movies, these last 2 ones are, is the fact that Hagrid shows clear remorse for basically letting the trio get caught up in this Philosopher's Stone's plot. While although in the films I think it does show that Hagrid cares deeply about them, it doesn't show quite how clearly he really feels bad for not fulfilling his role as a responsible figure and allowing them to get into all this trouble. So it basically says in the book, Hagrid says to Harry while crying, "It's all my ruddy fault," he sobbed, his face in his hands. "I told the evil how to get past Fluffy. I told him. It was the only thing he didn't know, and I told him. You could have died, or for a dragon egg. I'll never drink again. I should be chucked out and made to live as a muggle." Hagrid, said Harry, shocked to see Hagrid shaking with grief and remorse, great tears leaking down into his beard. "Hagrid, he'd have found out somehow. This is Voldemort we're talking about. He'd have found out even if you hadn't told him." "He could have died," sobbed Hagrid. "I don't say that name." And then Harry replies and shouts back at Hagrid, "Voldemort." I love this relationship between Harry and Hagrid, which is a key difference. We obviously see they have a relationship in the films, but in the books it is much stronger, I feel. And my final point is actually after Harry gets off the train, the other end, and sees Uncle Vernon again. Uncle Vernon runs into Ron's family, and he is extremely rude about the fact that they are wizards, as he feels once again that they are very odd. It was Uncle Vernon, still purple-faced, still moustached, still looking furious at the nerve of Harry, carrying an owl in a cage in a station full of ordinary people. Behind him stood Aunt Petunia and Dudley, looking terrified at the very sight of Harry. "You must be Harry's family," said Mrs. Weasley. "In a manner of speaking," said Uncle Vernon. "Hurry up, boy, we haven't got all day." He walked away. Harry hung back for a last word with Ron and Hermione. "See you over the summer, then." And that shows that Uncle Vernon is absolutely distraught with, obviously, Harry and the fact that he's a wizard, and it's just like his worst possible nightmare. Now, although a lot of things were maybe not complete differences, they were instead things that were left out, I think they were all very, for me at least, very interesting, and I cannot wait to see them televised in the series. Fingers crossed they do. I really hope that they show the rudeness of Uncle Vernon and the fact that he is actually, I mean, they show it well in the films, but I think there is more there to him, especially if you give him that extra time at the beginning and the end to show the fact that he just really, really hates all things wizarding world. So I do think like the character development of the Dursleys could be so amazing because like, even though they aren't big characters, they're a big part of Harry's life, and it just adds so many layers to the plot. Furthermore, I have an honourable mention, which is Peeves. I've spoken about him before. I love Peeves. He is the Hogwarts friendly, cheeky, really cheeky poltergeist who basically tends to make everything much more difficult than it appears in the films at any one point. So I'm just going to talk about him quickly, although I will be mindful that I've spoken about him on this channel a lot. So let me just say, my thing with Peeves, and the reason why I think he would have added so much to the films, is the fact that every time Harry is out of bed, pretty much, Peeves tends to make it go wrong. So Harry may be doing a great job from hiding from Filch, but Peeves is so cheeky and so mischievous and really frustrating that he would happily alert Filch to the fact Harry was there. Furthermore, he absolutely winds up Filch, and I think once again it just shows the Hogwarts dynamic so nicely by adding that character development of Filch and then also showing why actually Harry's life was made harder and his plots were made harder, because I feel like a lot of people who have only watched the films think this doesn't make any sense, that was way too easy. But actually in the books it explains it all in my perspective. So that is all from me today. It was a bit of a longer one, but I hope you enjoyed. And if you did enjoy, have a look at our channel because we have lots and lots of Harry Potter content. If you liked it and you'd like one all about the Chamber of Secrets, put a comment down below and don't forget to leave us a thumbs up. That's all from me. Bye bye.